Joining us now at the WEDF conference is Ashok Khosla from Development Alternatives in India. Thank you very much for your time. I wanted to start probably with a provocative question for you. Do you believe consumers have a conscience?
Yes, some do. Not many, but some do, and I think more and more will. But it's the consumers in the north you're talking about, and you know they're the ones who are buying this coffee or cocoa or bananas or whatever from developing countries. And they can choose to buy things because they're made environmentally friendly way, or they're made by adult labor rather than child labor, and so on. So they do have feelings about that, and I think they do express them by choosing ones for which they may be prepared to pay a little more, not a lot, perhaps yet. But I don't think that's really the central issue. The central issue is at the other end. It's the housewife in a village who barely has any choice at all just to get the food on the table for her kids. She has to actually work so hard that the question of consumer conscience in poor countries is somewhat different. The conscience really is about how do you survive on a rapidly shrinking resource base with very little money and still bring up a family. So there are different problems in different societies.
You've talked in the past about these individuals as being the key drivers for, ongoing sustainability. Why does it rest with individuals and not, government organisations or big business?
I don't think that government organisations and big business are really in the business of conscience. They are there for various other reasons. Big business has a job to do to make money. Big government has a job to do to set up laws and try and enforce them, and generally should be doing so in the interest of the public, but often has imperatives, partly from the electoral processes and the kind of supports they get, to support the interests of business as well. So to some extent, it's left to the whistleblowers and the watchdogs and the guardians of the public good, who are really outside in civil society, in NGOs and voluntary organizations, sometimes in the media, sometimes in academic institutions.
So do you believe that governments have failed the sustainability movement?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think they're getting more and more onto it. It's not a matter of having failed. They haven't got to the stage where one could say that they have failed. But it seems to me they'll have to do a lot more if we're going to have a sustainable future.
What sort of things would you like to see them do?
Governments have to set in place fiscal and policy instruments, taxes, incentives, subsidies, whatever, that encourage people to use resources in a more sensible way, reduce the use of materials and water and energy. Otherwise, you would run out more or less of all these things. They have to set up mechanisms by which research and development of new and alternatives to all these can be done more speedily. But I think the most important thing governments have to do is to educate the public. And they don't actually provide that leadership yet. They don't really go out of their way to bring to the attention of the public the kinds of issues that are now confronting the economy.
What drives you? What drives you in all those amazing projects you've been involved in?
Just the hope of seeing that little girl's face light up in the village when she gets a source of light, or is able to read, or is able to get a decent meal. I think that's really what drives me. I live in a country with 700 million people who are essentially outside the economy, who have very, very little compared with us to live on, to fulfill their lives. And every time I see one of them improve the conditions in which she lives, it's terrific. That's what drives me.